Hello, and welcome to the Movie Universe. I'm your host, Movie Fan. Today, I got something real special lined up. I'm going to be talking about Disney's American Legends. Now, I'm sure you probably never heard of it because sadly, this movie wasn't really very popular. For whatever reason, it was completely overlooked. It was a direct-to-video film that Disney did back in the day, and somehow there was just no publicity for it. And it's really too bad because this film is really quite good. What the movie basically is what a lot of people would call a compilation video. In this case, we get 4 Disney shorts. We got John Henry, Paul Bunyan, Johnny Appleseed, and The Brave Engineer. Now, how this video goes is it's started off with an opening introduction by legendary actor James Earl Jones, who we all know as Darth Vader. Basically, he opens up by talking about folklore and legendary heroes themselves. Basically, this.
Did you know that knowledge of our heroes was passed down to us by people telling stories from generation to generation, from the loggers of the Northeast all the way out to the pioneers in the covered wagons that traveled westward on the plains? They began as popular tales of simple men who did mighty things. The stories of their deeds grew with every retelling into the legends that forged our national backbone. These tales not only gave hope and laughter to early Americans, the settlers, pioneers, immigrants, freed slaves, men, women, and children. They gave them the common ground of myth and legend, fueling their courage to push back the frontier and build this great country of ours together.
And when he's done with that opening speech, he introduces every story one by one. And he talks about some of the origins and the meanings behind them, depending upon the short. For instance, we got John Henry. He explains how big and powerful John Henry's story was to everybody. And he even explains how big of an impact John Henry had on American culture. And then we move on to Johnny Appleseed, where he reads us a little poem that was written in his honor.
Long, long after, when settlers put up beam and rafter, they asked the birds, who gave this fruit? Who watched this fence till the seeds took root? To the farthest west he followed the sun, his life and empire just begun.
And he explains that Johnny Appleseed, he was proof that you didn't have to be big and strong to make an impact in the world. You just had to do what you do best. And that's what he did. He planted apple trees, and because of that, he was able to help Americans settle further west. Then after that, we cover the legendary Paul Bunyan. Of course, with Paul Bunyan, he had to tell the classic tall tales of him, and that was basically this.
Strong as 10 grizzlies, 63 axe handles high, and he had a soft spot in his heart for a massive blue ox named Babe. The forest rang like thunder with their labors. Nothing made of flesh and blood could match Paul Bunyan's power.
And after Paul Bunyan's done, we jump into the brave engineer, Casey Jones, who, in this case, we end up getting a very interesting backstory.
Our next hero's real name was John Luther Jones, but you probably know him as Casey Jones, a crack train engineer who was courageous, loyal, and who had an unflinching sense of duty. In the late 1800s, rail tracks stretched from the cities of the East to the plains of the West. With bent backs and hard labor, America's immigrants, Europeans, Asians, and Africans, laid the tracks that carried the building blocks of our nation: food, lumber, and the U.S. mail. Casey was a master at the throttle. He could play a musical symphony on a train whistle, and he could get the mail to the station in record-breaking time. Casey would have marveled at today's modern advances like the bullet train and email. Now, here is Casey Jones.
Of course, when The Brave Engineer is over, we come back to James Earl Jones making this very glorious speech.
Who will be the doers and dreamers of tomorrow? Any one of you could be a Johnny Appleseed. Maybe you have a devotion to duty like Casey Jones, or you have an inner strength to stand tall against adversity like John Henry. Use your imagination. What frontiers will you conquer? Look for the heroes around you and celebrate them. You can find them in the past, in the present, even in the mirror. Because you're the stuff that legends are made of.
And no truer words were spoken. You really can find heroes in the past, and the present, and even in the mirror. Very wise words to live by indeed. Very wise words. Now, as great as this video is, it does have one pretty big issue, at least in my opinion. While it has most of the legendary characters of American folklore, or tall tales, whatever you prefer, there is one iconic character who, for some reason, is left out of the picture entirely. And that would be Pecos Bill. Why is he not a part of this? I don't know. For some reason, they did not include him. For some reason, they just thought he wasn't important. And it's really quite sad because Pecos Bill represented the cowboys, just like Paul Bunyan represented the lumberjacks or John Henry represented the railroad workers. And, of course, African Americans. And that's what's sad about it, that he was left out of the picture. And if you're going to ask me, why do I think he was left out of it? Well, I can only think of one possibility that might make sense. I think it has something to do with the fact that when they made that short, it was narrated and sung by the legendary Roy Rogers and the Sons of the Pioneers. And, well, if you ever see the short, it starts off with them around a campfire and getting ready to tell the story. And it ends with them back at the campfire again. I think that could have caused some problems for the dialogue with James Earl Jones because it would have been criminal to cut out the opening and ending with Roy Rogers, at least at that time. So that's what I think happened. But that's just a theory. Fact is, we'll never know for sure why Pecos Bill wasn't part of it. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video because I had a pretty good time making it. And I know what you're thinking. What the heck just happened? You didn't review the shorts themselves. Well, I felt that these shorts were so special that I have to review them individually, one by one. And I will start reviewing them next week. And there's going to be a bonus for you guys because after I release these videos, there will be a link right down below taking you to my BitChute channel where you can actually watch the shorts themselves. And after I'm done with the fourth one, there'll be another bonus to follow. But I will tell you that one in due time. Until then, synchronize your watches because next week I'm going to start it off by reviewing John Henry. This is Movie Fan signing off.